cognitive activities, so just stimulating your brain, turning it on. People are like, well, what can be good for my brain? If your brain's feeling challenged, or say even learning a new recipe, learning new things, as long as your brain is getting turned on and you're thinking, that's good for you.
You have found Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. Downloadable audio episodes can be found in the podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. We are locally underwritten by the Bank of Sun Prairie, and today we're welcoming / preparing to learn from Hannah Klassy of Dementia Dimensions. So, Hannah, let's start with what is Dementia Dimensions?
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah. So I am the sole owner and founder of Dementia Dimensions. It really is where I help people navigate the challenges through dementia and dementia care. That could be those living with dementia, families, caregivers. That's kind of the simple version of it.
All right.
There's a lot to dementia care, especially if you receive a diagnosis. And so because there are so many challenges in just the navigation of it, I have started my business to really help these families.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, you raised an interesting point right off the bat here, because I guess in my head, when somebody says, hey, I have dementia, or my mom has dementia, or something of that nature, you assume that's a light switch. Like you either don't have dementia or you do have dementia. But it sounds like you mentioned something about people being diagnosed and then saying, oh, I need help. So that, I imagine you're on a scale, a lesser scale of having dementia, something like that. Can
Sure,
you tell us about that?
Yeah, and that's a very common question, so thanks for bringing that up. There are stages of dementia, and even before dementia, and let me just start with what dementia is.
Yeah.
It's really a term for your brain changing. So it's changes in your memory, your thinking, and your reasoning. So a lot of people think, oh, it might be a disease, but really it's just a term. So different conditions and diseases can cause brain changes, which is the dementia.
All right.
So that's where you come into play with Alzheimer's disease. Because of Alzheimer's, that is making your brain change, which in case then you have dementia. So different conditions and diseases can cause your brain to change in different ways. And so a lot of times with dementia, there's earlier stages too, which then isn't considered quite dementia yet. When you're diagnosed with dementia, it really means that your daily life activities are a challenge for you. You're not independent anymore. Some people, as they notice brain changes and they go to the doctor, they may hear the word mild cognitive impairment, which typically is before you lose that independence. So you may notice some brain changes, but you're still maybe independent at home driving. You may notice that your memory's not great anymore, but you can still do those daily life activities. As dementia progresses, you lose those abilities. So yes, that even in the beginning is a lot to kind of learn and understand. And sometimes even if people go to the doctor, they don't get this huge explanation. So I try to help with that too, with families and caregivers. I do think it's really important to educate yourself on it, even if you are a caregiver, so you understand, maybe as they are progressing or what to look for, that you have an idea and that can be helpful to that person living with dementia.
All right.
Yeah.
So it's almost a symptom of a deeper problem, typically.
Right. And, a lot of families that may reach out to me, or even the person living with dementia, they say, they may notice brain changes. Is it even worth a diagnosis? Should I go in? It's really up to them. I give them reasons of why it may benefit them, as well as maybe why in your choice, if you don't want to go to the doctor and receive a diagnosis, that's your choice.
Yeah.
I'm really here to help them of their wishes and their best interests. But because there are over 100 different conditions that can cause dementia,
wow.
You're really looking at, once you maybe get a diagnosis, and why we hear Alzheimer's a lot is because that's 80% of what dementia is that people get diagnosed with. So if you know it is Alzheimer's disease, there's different characteristics that come with it. There's Lewy body dementia. There's different types that a lot of times you see different brain changes within that. So it can be helpful to know, it may start to look like as you progress and what maybe comes with it. Not that it's always the same, but it can be helpful to really see like what may come out of this. What should I be looking for? That can be helpful.
So I guess, man, you're opening my eyes here
I know.
because no, it's very good. It's very good because I guess in my head I'm like, oh, dementia's whatever. You're having a rough time with your brain.
Yeah.
But in the end, I imagine it could be different segments, memory or even cognitive thinking.
Yep.
I don't know, dealing with numbers or something like that, or spatial recognition.
Yep.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be all or nothing.
Right.
Oh,
and even then physically, it affects you too. So that's an important part too is when families come to me they ask me like, well, what can you help me with?
Oh.
Right.
That's
and
a rough question.
There's so much to it that I really, start to ask them questions of where they are at now, what their wishes are. How do we plan for the now as well as for the future? Because I really want to help prevent a crisis.
Okay. Tell me, what would a crisis be in this regard?
Sure. So a lot of times I think of a crisis as, say they want to stay at home and families are like, I don't want to, I want to keep them home. The biggest thing is keeping them safe. Sometimes with dementia, as your brain changes, wandering can happen. You come into play with, as your brain changes, even driving, leaving the house, cooking becomes hard. So that could become dangerous. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So different aspects in that, as well as preventing falls. That's a huge one that happens that I think not always preventable, but you really can, help reduce the risk of showering, toileting, making sure we're not falling in those daily activities you need to do, keeping them safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the falling in this specifically, is that because people forget where they are? They forget there's a step there kind of thing?
Yeah, it could be. It could be visual. It could be a lot of people, they don't even, a lot to showering, there's a lot of different steps your brain has to do to think about. It could be, stepping into the tub. Maybe they're a little weaker than they used to be. They don't know where, they don't have grab bars. The process of showering, of even standing up, moving around. What do I even do first, second, and third? Soap, shampoo, conditioner. There's so much to it that we take it for granted because we've done it our whole life. But as your brain changes, those steps can become really hard, and that their decision making becomes more poor, really, in general. So you're trying to help somebody that you tell them you need to do this, and they look at you and say, why?
Interesting.
Yeah, so that becomes a challenge too of somebody who can't reason. How do we get them to do things when you want to tell them, you feel like you want to reason with them? I'm telling you this because I want to keep you safe. I want you to be able to do these things, but they're not able to understand why you're telling them this.
Got it. Okay.
So that's a whole nother aspect to it.
In their head, they don't necessarily know that they forgot or don't know these things. Okay.
Correct.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, right.
I imagine people get stubborn with that, and then that ends up with other challenges that just snowball effect that way.
Yeah, fights, arguing.
Sure.
That other person gets really agitated really easily. And that's another part of your brain, the emotional part of your brain that at one time they used to be able to handle their emotions. You get mad, okay, let's think about it. To them, that can be a really quick switch. So working through that too emotionally can be hard.
I imagine there's a frustration on their part because if they are realizing that they're having a hard time with this stuff, and there's, I don't know, we can talk about cures or help later, but to be in that position where you don't know or you feel like you're not intelligent enough or whatever description you want to use, I know I would be frustrated.
Right.
I get upset when I lose my keys.
Right.
It's like, how do I not know this?
Yeah, and so that's a big thing I talk with families is really we have to remember that because these people are having a hard time reasoning, let's try to keep their independence, at the forefront.
All right.
Even though they're having a tough time, really encouraging, them to handle their independence as much as possible to keep them feel as if they are in charge of their life still. So even though you may have to help them more, to really make them feel like that they're still able to do things versus taking that all away from them. It may be, I feel like we all really want to be helpful. So we start if they have dementia, we start doing everything for them, when I do believe in I have a background in therapy, and we can talk about that, speech therapy, but it is important to try to keep their independence and have them do things, because you're challenging their brain. You're making them think that once you start doing everything for them, they don't have to think anymore.
As make well it worse,
as, right. They can progress a little quicker.
Okay.
As well as, everyone, they used to be independent in their life. And now when you start taking everything away, they're seeing it and they're not understanding why. So that's when frustration can really happen.
All right. Yeah. So you just have to be the guardrails.
Yeah, a little bit. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, to be a guardrail, keep them safe, but also keep them, doing what they want to enjoy doing as well. We might have a different way of what we want their life to look like, but we really have to remember that they're still in charge of their own life, that even though what might be best for us, we really have to remember, what is best for them. And that kind of brings into also, as they notice, initial brain changes, and it's still more of a mild stage where maybe it's not quite dementia yet, but they talk about mild cognitive impairment, or their brain is still able to talk about it, reason with it, which can be really hard. But at that time, I encourage families and even those living with dementia to, what are their wishes? What do they want their life to look like? If it progresses, because that can help the families, this is their wish, that even though maybe we wanted this for them, this is what they wanted for their life, which can be hard. But I think that's really important, that they're still kind of the driver in their own life, as they should be.
And they're having that conversation before it gets...
Right.
I guess before there comes a point where it's unable to be had.
Right, exactly. Okay. Yep, that's what I encourage. And that's why I try to talk to families of how my service can be helpful and beneficial, even in the beginning. A lot of people wait until a crisis happens, that they're like, oh no, Hannah, what do I do now? So that's kind of a challenge I've had, is that I know caregivers and families are so busy and overwhelmed, but my idea of my business and service is I want to decrease that stress and overwhelm, that if we do these things early, or even think about it, not that we can plan, to even know what's going to happen, but if we look into things, different ideas, know their wishes, that as things progress, you feel confident in your decisions and you have resources, that if something does happen, you know what to do next.
Got it. Mm-hmm. So let's shift gears into the business side.
Sure.
So how do you end up in a business like this?
Right, yeah. So I have a background in speech language pathology, also known as a speech therapist. So I still practice that. I graduated, and then I have worked in the geriatric field since I graduated, and I've loved it. Yeah, so I've worked in memory care facilities, skilled nursing facilities, assisted livings, worked in some hospitals. And during this time, especially when I had more of the memory care assisted living, I really noticed that as I worked with my patients and clients as a speech therapist, obviously I learned a lot about the brain, their communication changes. So I have a really good background of just understanding the brain, which has helped me in my business, as well as I come up with strategies even for families or the person, living with dementia, that helps in the business wise. But I really understood, families would reach out to me and they just looked at me and said, I don't know what to do. I can't communicate with them. Or, they have a lot of grief of even maybe them living in a memory care facility. And I found this huge gap of, they go to the doctor, maybe they get a diagnosis, and it's for the patient, or the person living with dementia, I should say, and the families are sitting there like, we don't have any help. Like, we're actually the ones taking care of them. They go to the doctor's appointments. It's maybe 15, 20 minutes, right?
Push them in, shove them out, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's sadly the reality of healthcare right now. And, they a lot of times get referred, but I really just found that huge gap of these families need help, especially because there's so many different changes that, say a change happens, you might not get into the doctor for a whole month. And it could be little things like communication. I'm trying to communicate with them and they're becoming super agitated. If you go to the doctor, will they give you the exact strategy of even how to do that? Right. So there's a lot, I think, that I can help with, of just the ins and outs of everyday reality.
Fair.
Of life.
So you were working in these places.
Yes.
And being the speech therapist.
Yes.
What made you decide to go off on your own?
And I still practice that. So
Okay.
I'm trying to grow my business. I would love to do this full time.
All right.
So I appreciate you having me to kind of
Yeah.
get my service out there.
Absolutely.
I really was Googling, like, I kind of want to be a dementia navigator, right? Is this even a job? Like, does anyone else do
ask you
this?
that. Are you the only one in the world doing this? Or?
I Googled and I actually found a few other individuals that were speech therapists and had the same idea. There was one in Indiana, and there's another one I just met, but I have never met anyone else in Wisconsin that's really done specifically. I think there's people that help with dementia, but my idea of the whole navigation one-on-one help, I have not found anyone in our state. So there's very few of us, which can be hard, of people knowing that I'm a service out there, right? I'm kind of like this unknown thing that I'm trying to get my name out there and how I can be beneficial and people to trust me.
Right.
Because it's not a common job, if people know about physical therapists or doctors refer a physical therapist, where I'm kind of sitting out here feeling like I can be super helpful, but how can I be involved in people's lives and get my name out there?
Right, build
be
the
helpful.
awareness. I mean,
Right.
it's funny. I was just teaching a business class last night, and one of the slides was, it's always easier to be number two. And that second, like, you got Netscape or Ask Jeeves or whatever it was way back when,
Sure.
and now Google's taken over the world.
Yeah.
Or has taken over the world,
Yeah.
I guess it
Yeah.
would be.
Yeah.
So they weren't the first, but they've become dominant
Yeah.
because they don't have to explain what they do. It's already been, that trail's been paved, I guess.
Right.
So you
right.
have a challenging situation now where you have
Yeah.
to say, like, hey, this is what I do, this is why you need it.
Right.
And
right.
I'm certain that after clients use you, that they're like, oh my gosh, I couldn't live without Hannah.
Yeah.
But before
Yeah.
they knew you existed, they just didn't know you existed.
Yeah. And I try to be involved in support groups as well. So
Okay.
I've held some support groups, which helps me too, because there's a lot of, it really gives me the idea of what people go through, day to day,
sure.
and even just different things that pop up. But I hear it far too often of, even when I get myself in support groups, and these may be people that have been, helping care for somebody with dementia for 5, 6, 7 years, and I hear it too often of, I wish I would have known you earlier.
Okay.
Because I start talking about of how, in early stages what to do, but they're kind of past that, and maybe their loved one's in more of a severe stage now. And it breaks my heart that, they say that and I'm still helpful to them, but at the time they really look at me and said, I just wish I would have had you. And that's one of the biggest challenges of people are overwhelmed and stressed, or may not even know I'm a service, all of that involved, that they may even hear that I'm a service, but they're already so overwhelmed that they think adding someone else to their team is, they don't have time for it.
Right.
And that's the reality of a big challenge, I guess, too, of trying to fit myself in their life. And I tell people, you may need me right now. You may not need me for another 6 months. It's really of how their life is progressing in general.
So tell me how the help looks. Is it you meeting with the caretaker? You meeting with the person that has the dementia?
Yeah.
Or both?
Yeah, it could be. I've had people who have been diagnosed with, say, mild cognitive impairment themselves and want to reach out to really maybe learn more about dementia or what they can do to help slow progression, as well as family members that reach out to me. And it really is kind of where they're at and where we can go from where they are. And I can maybe talk a little bit about even keeping your brain healthy. So I talk with a lot of people, with dementia, and I know, right? Yeah, we all need those reminders. But really looking at your brain, they talk about your health overall, and I say, kind of what you think what is good for your heart is also what's good for your brain. So they talk a lot about staying physically active. 30 minutes or more if you can, 5 days out of the week, can help slow progression of dementia. Being social, so talking with people, and a lot of this it's good for your emotional well-being, as well as when you talk with somebody, you're listening, your brain is turned on. Your diet, they've done studies on, they call it the MIND diet, and it's the Mediterranean and DASH diet combined. And so that's looking at just foods that are healthy for you, living, they talk about a certain amount of red meat to be eating, not that you can't, but decreasing that. The sweets, the sugars, also the good things to eat, the green leafy vegetables, nuts, berries. So kind of looking at that of what you're eating. Cognitive activities, so just stimulating your brain, turning it on. People are like, well, what can be good for my brain? If your brain's feeling challenged, or say even learning a new recipe, learning new things, as long as your brain is getting turned on and you're thinking, that's good for you.
All right.
As well as, they talk about rest and sleep and the importance of really kind of having a routine of making sure you're getting enough sleep, maybe not sleeping too much. You can take naps. They say to limit it 20 minutes a day. Now, as dementia may progress, their sleeping may increase, things like that. And then overall, just maintaining good health, looking at your blood pressure, things like that. So those are the main things to kind of stay healthy.
All right.
And keeping your brain challenged. And that's why I talk about independence of as you keep them involved in their own life and doing things that's turning their brain on, keeping it as healthy as possible.
All right. So doing the crossword puzzles, Sudoku puzzles.
Yeah, they talk about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And some people will say, I don't like doing puzzles, and that's fine.
Sure.
Right? It's finding activities that you also enjoy doing that makes it important too. Otherwise, you're probably not going to do it.
Right.
Even now in the springtime, I try to think of new ideas of gardening, planting things, just being involved in things you may used to do. It might look different. Maybe you liked cooking, but as dementia progresses, you may need help cooking, but keeping them involved of washing vegetables,
right.
helping with the cooking process. It might, they might not be able to do it all themselves, but if that's what they enjoy doing, try to keep them involved in it.
All right.
Yeah.
So it reminds me, I guess I didn't do this because I feel like I needed some help in the brain work, but I just started learning how to play guitar.
Nice. Yes. Learning something new.
Yeah. And it was one of those things where you feel like a moron. Because the guy just grabs my guitar and he's doing just like crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm there just staring at it like a kid that just saw a pencil for the first time. Like, where do you put your fingers?
Yeah. Yeah. Which can be hard, especially as your brain is changing. Learning new things might be more challenging. And people recognize this. They'll say, I used to be able to work my phone. I used to be, back in the day, I used to be on the computer, and now it's so hard. So really still trying to involve them, and it may be even on our phones we have an ability to make it more simple, that they can still use it. It might need to be more of a simple version of it, but yeah, learning new things is challenging in general, and it can be frustrating, but not that we want it to be to that point, but you're turning your brain on, you're thinking.
Yeah, it's one of those, you get out of the day-to-day minutia.
Yeah,
just to try something new.
Yeah, which does a lot for your brain and your health in general.
Yeah, I feel like it's a use it or lose it kind of thing.
Yeah, that can be it too. If
you're just sitting in front of a TV or something like
exactly.
that.
You're just not really thinking. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and I tell people, they worry about, should I always be doing something? And there is a time for rest, and especially people who are starting to have more brain challenges, we do need to rest our brain a little bit, because if you try to do too much, that can be overstimulating, and then you can see that fatigue increase. So that can be challenging too, is how much is too much, but how much should I be doing in a day that you can stay healthy and active.
All right.
In doing so.
Fair.
Yeah.
From a marketing standpoint, what have you done so far that has worked?
Yeah, I really started to just network. I talk about a lot that I need a team even with my business. I am not the expert in everything, and I don't try to be.
And stuff like that?
Yeah.
Big challenge.
Yeah. There's so many different areas that we even talked about that say they need another caregiver in their home. I'm not the one to do it. So networking for me to grab a team for business and marketing wise of even people to know about my business was, I think, big, as well as for myself of trusting people to help me in my business. So that's been a huge one.
Okay.
I try to go to a lot of, if there's fairs that go on, senior living fairs, trying to reach out to a lot of social workers, even at hospitals, so they kind of know a lot of times. And that's where I feel like the gap is, that if these people go to the doctor or say they had a fall, they may just be sent back home with nothing.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, they get better, and then their challenge is, okay, they go back home because they're healthy enough, but then you're still living with the daily challenges of maybe dementia, right? So I think that's still a huge gap. But I think, with people living longer in general, a lot of people are knowing more about dementia. So it's growing in a sense, as well as the amount of caregivers. I think there's a statistic, there's over 11 million unpaid caregivers. So that in
Unpaid?
general.
Okay, so you're talking family, friends?
Yeah,
Okay.
family, friends, things like that.
11 million?
Yeah.
In the U.S.?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's a measurable percentage of the population.
Yeah, so that's huge. I mean, of how many people I feel like I could help out there in general. Yeah. But yeah, I'm just marketing. I mean, this is helping me market in general.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Just because, like what we talked about earlier, it's getting my name out there and who to talk with, who are my customers and how can they learn about my business. It's a lot of maybe people who have used me that maybe tell other people, getting involved in support groups, that the people that are literally going through it day to day, that they know I'm out there. But I would say that is a challenge still of just marketing myself.
All right.
And I've taken some business classes to learn, because starting a business, there's a lot of challenges, or learning how to, do a business in general. Learning a lot about that, and I feel like I still am.
Okay, well, we all are.
Okay.
Safe place here. Anybody that says that they have all figured out is lying.
Lying, yeah.
Or they just don't know.
Yeah.
I guess there was a time, I can tell you when I first started my business, I was taking all these classes, but they were classes on taxes or bookkeeping, sales, marketing. I didn't take any on HR or hiring, because I thought, how big of a deal is that, man?
Right.
You throw an ad out there, people come to the interview you, or you interview them, you pay them, they do their job, rinse, repeat. And I didn't know that no-shows were a thing. I didn't know, oh my gosh, there's so many things I didn't know from managing employees. I just figured you could just be like, go do your job. I'll send you a paycheck, move on with your life.
Yeah.
And you learn all these things that, oh my gosh, I had no idea that I didn't know.
Right.
So then you're like, okay, I got to find that. You put on that.
Exactly.
Yeah, culture of a business. I didn't know that was a thing.
Right.
I just thought we were cool, man.
I know. Yeah, you'll get into it and it'll kind of grow, but I feel like there are different things and ideas you can do to try to get yourself out there, and you want to do it the right way in a sense, but what is the right way? Especially everyone's business is so different that there's a lot to it.
Fair.
Yeah.
So the people that typically come to you, are they the caregivers, or they're the people that have been diagnosed?
I would say more family and caregivers.
Okay.
Currently that reach out to me. And that's why I try to talk about even those living with dementia, that they're able to reach out to me as well. And maybe when it's so new, they don't even think about it in a sense. Until, then it's the families when they're having the challenges, and then the people living with dementia might not even know they're having challenges. But that I'm out there for everyone involved, really.
Okay.
And some people, they ask, if they meet with me, should they be there? The person living with dementia, should they not? And that's really, I talk about their situation. And even that's where receiving a diagnosis comes into play. Some people who are diagnosed or start to notice brain changes want to know everything that's going on.
All right.
Right? Like, what is going on with me? I want to know. There's others that look at it and they become stressed and overwhelmed and say, this is making me more stressed, which is not really what we want to do, right?
No, opposite.
So it's really on what they want in that standpoint, for me to just help them through that. But I would say right now, it's a lot more families and caregivers that I help currently.
So I have to apologize, because this is going to sound like a dumb question.
No.
But from a diagnostic point of view, how do they test for that? How do they test for dementia?
Right. And that's where even research with dementia and different types that cause dementia is out there. The research is still going. That's why I tell them the doctor can be helpful. I can't just diagnose somebody with dementia. So a lot of times I tell them to go to the doctor because they do run different tests. There's cognitive tests. They can do scans of your brain to really see what's going on in your brain, to really see, Alzheimer's disease is really, the front part of your brain. They can kind of see what's going on, where that's how they pretty much diagnose it in a sense. But I've had a lot of families reach out to me that they go and get these tests done and think of somebody where maybe their brain is changing and they're not quite yet they're not in the mild stage, maybe they're more in a moderate stage, and you take them into a doctor. They're getting cognitive tests, which a lot of that is asking questions, testing your memory, your reasoning. You go get a scan, you get put in a machine. A lot of that is scary.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of people have reached out to me to say that was really traumatizing for them, and I don't even want them to go back to the doctor. Like, that was so traumatizing for them that I try to help them through then. Okay, if that is something that they just are unable to go to the doctor, what are different ways we can do, as well as your day-to-day life. If you do know, what your diagnosis is really in general, how do we live the day-to-day life? Because that's really what it is about, is working through those challenges through it.
All right. I'm thinking it kind of makes sense, because if let's say they go to the doctor, they get tested, and the doctor's like, hey, you have, I don't know if they do it in levels, you have level 5 dementia or something like that. And then you're like, great, what do I do with that information?
Right. Like, does
that mean I can't work a stove, or what does that even mean?
Right.
So to go back for more diagnostics seems kind of unnecessary, because there's no, outside of using someone like you that can say, hey, let's put some things in place. Right. The doctor's going to be like, yep, you're at a different level.
Right.
Get out of here.
Right. Exactly. And I actually also just had somebody reach out to me where they said they went to the doctor, they were at home by themselves, and then received a phone call, and they basically said, you are on the path to Alzheimer's disease, and then kind of will schedule another appointment. And this person was really upset by all means. They were alone. They just got this devastating news. They also were saying, what does path to Alzheimer's mean? Do I have it? Do I not? Like, what do I do with this information? And they didn't have an appointment for another month, which then their family was getting involved. But they're sitting there, and that's hard and tough and emotionally. Yeah. And right away, too, when families reach out to me, I try to bring into, how are you emotionally? And you really have to think about your emotional well-being. Even when people get diagnosed, maybe they're not ready yet to hear about all the resources that are out there, how I can be super helpful. Maybe it's you're kind of starting a grieving process, even the caregivers, right? Let's take care of that first, because if we don't, as this progresses, things are going to be even harder. And I go into the emotional well-being, not only those of the grieving process of you get diagnosed with this, the caregivers start to notice that their loved one is changing. You used to know somebody where their brain changes, their personality changes. That's a whole grieving process. You almost feel like you're losing somebody you once knew.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's challenging. And then as, personalities change, or say hallucinations, they start having hallucinations, things like that, where their brain is changing. How do we help with that? It can be scary. So really, I try to talk about that first, because I think we should talk about that more first, rather than trying to just feel like, how do I do to fix this, or what can I do? Yeah. It's a process. There's a grieving process, to be patient with that, and find resources where there are support groups. There is counseling out there to get involved and talk with others. And I talk about, a lot about having a team, but as much as you want to try to do this alone, you won't be able to, even as a caregiver, and you shouldn't. Have people you trust around you, because it will become really hard. And if you get those people on, board early on, and the people you trust as this progresses, you'll have those people to reach out to. And I think we're all stubborn in our own ways. We want to be independent. You want to be the caregiver. I can do this alone. Don't worry about me. It's just, you can't do it alone. You really just can't.
I also imagine if you're a caregiver, before you ask for help, if you do ask for help, you're almost admitting that you need help to get this done.
Right.
And some people are so stubborn, they're just like, I got this.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal.
Right.
But as soon as they ask for help, they're realizing or acknowledging this is a big deal.
Right.
Which is probably smarter.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
pride can get in the way of a lot of things.
And that's why, early on talking about even the education, emotional well-being, talking with others that maybe have gone through this, once you hear their stories, they kind of start to recognize, okay, it is okay for me to ask for help. These other people did, and they found it super helpful. That if they hear other people's stories and really recognize, okay, like other people are doing this and they're telling me, you should ask for help. People, you need help. Because even as a caregiver, how do you take care of yourself? And then say you have to start looking after somebody 24/7. Oh, you guys also still live in a house together. How do you take care of a house in general? Think of lawn mowing, winter stuff. How do you cook? How do you clean? I mean, you just can't. You can't take care of somebody and everything else in your life by yourself.
Right. And stay sane.
And stay sane. Yeah. Stay, emotionally well in general. So yeah, it takes a team. It really does. Yeah, and I just want to be a part of that for people, that I'm not the only team member too for them, that I can be helpful in gaining resources and what I think would be beneficial for them. But yeah, even I can't go into somebody's life and do everything by myself.
No,
yeah.
it's not the right choice. It's fair.
Yeah.
Tell me, what does help look like? I don't know if there is a typical help. You're just like, 5 hours or whatever. Just help me understand if somebody reaches out to you. Let's say they're a caretaker.
Okay.
And they're like, hey, my mom, we just think she's going downhill mentally.
Sure.
Where do we start?
Sure.
How does that work?
Sure. And that's a big one. And I respect, a lot of families that say we want to keep them at home. Are they safe? So a lot of times I will go into the home. I ask what their daily life is. Can you bring them still to the grocery store? Can you not? What is challenging? Maybe they say, even getting them into a shower during the week. They tell me they don't need to shower because they can't remember when they showered, or they think, they showered yesterday but didn't and couldn't remember it. So what are their current challenges, and where can we maybe add in other help and caregiving, even to give them a break? I tell them, to help with emotional well-being. Maybe it's not even to just go to the grocery store, which I tell them, if you need to go to the grocery store, maybe we need to bring somebody in, or even looking at like Meals on Wheels, even if it's 3 times a week, to help with that. That you kind of look at those hours of the days of where do you feel, pretty comfortable. It's not super stressful. Where are the stressful times, to bring other people in? If that answers your question.
Yeah, so it's putting together a game plan.
Yeah, kind of a game plan of maybe what we could add to be helpful, which could be walks during the day. Maybe they're not physically able to walk as much anymore, so maybe we have somebody come in and maybe they take them out and go for a walk. But going back to the emotional well-being, I talk a lot about taking care of yourself, and people will say, what does that mean? Like, people tell me that all the time. Make sure you take care of yourself in any, aspect of life. If something's hard or something traumatic happens, it's make sure to take care of yourself. What does that mean? Right? Like,
it's like saying,
okay,
have fun or be good.
Have fun,
right?
be good. Yeah. And so I try to tell them, think of times where what brings you joy? What do you like to do in life? Even, don't even think about, caregiving right now in the dementia aspect. Even maybe back in the day, say you were working and you wanted a day off. What would you do on your day off? Like, what do you like to do? What helps decrease stress? What do you enjoy doing? A lot of men, it might be like golfing. Some women, it might be getting a massage. Sometimes it might be hanging out. I have a lot of caregivers that might be older that have grandkids, and they say, I don't even have time to go see grandkids. Maybe they want a couple hours or a day off work. I want to go with the grandkids. That makes me happy. That helps relieve stress. So I don't have the exact answer of what they find joy in their life, but really finding time for themselves to just kind of decompress, and what do they like doing, or maybe what have they done before that they like to do.
I suppose that comes into the the Midwest work ethic. Or if you
Yes.
feel like you're not,
Yes.
if you're not taking care of this person that you're the caretaker for, that you must be a terrible person or
Right.
something like that.
Right.
Taking an hour off or a day off, good
Right.
gracious. Right.
Yes. You almost, you feel like, am I failing at this? Or you start to feel bad about it. And again, that's where I say you need breaks.
Yeah.
You need people to help you. You cannot do this alone, and you shouldn't. But yeah, that's the Midwest work ethic
Just
for
push,
sure.
push,
Just
push.
push. And I tell people early on too, and I tell them I'm not trying to scare you, but as a caregiver, what happens if something happens to you?
Oh.
What do you have a plan?
So for the person that's being taken care of,
Yeah, what goes?
they're in a world of hurt.
Right. And why I talk about that too is there's another statistic that there's all sorts of different types of caregivers, right? But actually caregivers that takes care of someone living with dementia, the prevalence of depression is 30 to 40% higher. So
I can easily believe that. Yeah.
yeah, right. I talk about that early on too, so they kind of recognize and I talk about how hard this can be, and that we really need to think about that. And they also have a higher risk of like hypertension, which is like high blood pressure. So physically and, your body, your health changes as a caregiver. And that's why it's so important that if you don't take care of yourself, you might be more in the world of hurt than even this person living with dementia. And if something happens to you and you're trying to do this alone and you end up in the hospital, what happens? Right. So that's where you do need a team. I mean, you never know what could happen at any given moment as you being a caregiver. And so trying to prepare and plan and think about that is really important, especially early on.
I bet.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's not top of mind.
No.
You're thinking, I got to take care of this person. I
Yes.
can do everything I can
Yeah.
for them.
Yep.
Completely oblivious to the fact that you got
Yeah.
to take care of yourself as well.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So tell me about your business. Where would you like it to go? Let's say over the course of, I'm going to be like 3 years.
Yeah.
Right? No one ever
Yeah.
really knows, but let's just say for fun, what is the goal 3 years from now?
Yeah. And that's where I looked at it. I do still really enjoy being a speech therapist. I think I still get a lot of practice of helping treating patients even living with dementia. But at this point in time, as I started my business, I really, really love doing it. I would like to make this full time. As if I do grow full time, gaining team members onto my team.
Nice.
And that would probably be even looking at, just because of the world of therapy, I do believe a lot of like speech therapists or occupational therapists have that background knowledge of not only the science behind it, but the treatment of it. And then even they've worked with families too of somebody, who could be on my team to help with it as well. That is my goal of it, is really making it full time. I know it will take time, and at first it's, I'm sure you've seen it where it's going through ups and downs, that you might have some more quiet hours and then all of a sudden it picks up. So I'm kind of managing that too right now of, I still do speech therapy. I do also my business. What is that going to look like? I don't know.
Sure.
In the near future.
No, I get it.
But I would hope that I could grow this just to help more people. If I'm growing, that means I'm helping more people out there and more families.
Nice.
As well as then I think other people recognize the gaps of it, of seeing maybe other people recognize it, that they want to be involved to help.
That's fair. That's totally fair. The what I want to ask, does this have to be in person, or can it be remote as well?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, I've actually, I can do virtual, and a lot of times it is. Sometimes it is just a phone call. Sometimes people have called me and said, as I've been with them for a little bit too, they woke up, they're not talking to me, they're not acting right. What do I do? Sometimes I'm just a phone call of, what has happened.
Just the sounding board.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes for families, thankfully, and I think since COVID too, really the FaceTime, we really recognize that we can, see each other face to face, or even just a phone call, and how that can still be helpful. So I've done this. I can do it anywhere over the U.S. I actually had someone from Ireland reach out to me too, so which is amazing. Yeah, I'm like, this is pretty cool. So it can be virtual for sure.
Okay.
I don't think I need to be. Some families, if they want me to come into the home, or I've had people reach out to me to really maybe they're in a facility, they want me to meet them. So it kind of depends where you're at. But yes, I can do in person, I could do virtual. Sometimes it's more of I meet with families at a coffee shop.
Okay.
Sometimes it's hard for them to leave their house. But sometimes that's what you have to do if they also say, if you come into the home, I'm a little afraid that, they're starting to be afraid of strangers, that how does this, I'm a little nervous of bringing you in, which is totally fair. I do let them know, with my background of speech therapy, that has really helped me, because you are trying to help somebody without really saying, I'm going to help you with X, Y, and Z, because they look at you and say, I don't need help with that. So there's a way of communicating and really gaining them to trust you that I tell them, I think it's worth me coming in and trying. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I do feel like I have a good sense of coming in without overwhelming everybody. That sometimes I come in as a friend, right? And that's how you gain them to trust you, of coming in as a friend, a person that they know.
Just chilling.
Really, just chilling, yeah, gaining their trust, because that's what you need first.
Fair. Mm-hmm. So are you advising people about things, I'm just thinking safety bars in the shower, or whatever they call those, grab bars? Grab
bars, things like that,
okay.
Yeah.
Are you advising on stuff like that as well?
Yeah, I can help with that. There's actually also a free service, and I'm forgetting the exact name of it, where they're either retired occupational therapists, but they can come into your house in the Madison area for free, and they will look at your home environment safety overall. So they can come home and they can also help acknowledge what they also might need. I've learned a lot just with my background of what can be helpful in the shower, or during toileting. Rugs and mats, things like that. We try to remove a lot of rugs in the home, actually, because that's a tripping hazard.
Yeah.
So I've learned that a lot from occupational therapists and physical therapists along the way. So I feel like I do have a good sense of how to keep the environment safe at home with this. Not that maybe I'm always the exact expert, but I feel like I know enough, or I'll refer them out for people to come in and really see how we can change it.
All right. Mm-hmm. So if let's just say you're a caretaker, or going to be a caretaker, because mom or dad just had a fall or something like that.
Sure.
You mentioned a team. Mm-hmm. What, just to get a checklist to systematize it? Probably too much, but let's just see.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to think something, my parents are older.
Yeah.
And I can imagine in the not too distant future, I'm going to get a phone call from my sister that's like, hey, this happened. And it would be nice to be like, okay, this is what we need to do, instead of being like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So from a team point of view, if you have a person that you're taking care of that has dementia, whether diagnosed or just we realize it, who would be members of that team?
Sure. And that's you, right? Yeah. Me. I talk a lot about even just gaining a primary care physician, whether you want to get into that whole, we talked about getting diagnosed or not. Really, because as you may change, or maybe as things go on, maybe you need medications. Maybe there's things going on that if something happens medically, having a doctor you trust and that you've talked with and they know what's going on. So if you have somebody where if you do need to have a check-in, that there's a doctor that you can trust, as well as in the world we live in, insurance is a thing. I was going to ask about that. Yeah. So a lot of times, say you want to go into a memory care facility, you need a diagnose. So in that standpoint, the doctor's the only one that can diagnose you. So sometimes early on, just gaining a doctor you trust. Then we go into family members, obviously, making sure you're gaining a team of people you trust around you. I talk actually out there about thinking financially.
Okay.
So I talk a lot about elder law attorneys.
Oh.
Because money and financial situations become a thing, especially if you start to need more care and help that costs money. Maybe you want to look into facilities. Things cost a lot of money these days, unfortunately. And there's ways that they understand the process of it, even for Medicare, things like that, that to be financially stable in the sense that you're confident that where you're at and what you can do with certain money, even protecting yourself. So there's trust, there's wills, things like that, that as you pass away are unable to make decisions. They also then healthcare power of attorneys, things like that, they get involved with that. And then I kind of give resources out there of maybe as they progress, thinking about therapy. In-home therapy can be a thing, even going to outpatient clinics.
Talking about mental or physical or both?
Could be both. Yeah,
Okay.
All involved. Yeah. I had a list, and it was like, because there's so many things that can go on, it's like they try to take on the job of 50 different things, right? That it really is hard to like say exactly, but those are good team members to start with, I would say. And then if you feel like you need more help, is really having a team of people who you trust who can help take care of them as well, that understands maybe their condition, how to communicate with them. So when I refer people, I know that I'm referring individuals that have a background of helping people with dementia, not just anybody that's going to come in to your home. So yeah, that's a hard one to exactly answer of a whole team, but those are some things that I try to talk about early on, I would say.
No, it's a starting point.
Yeah.
And that gets you 80% of the way there, 90% of the way there, which is probably way better than most people end up at.
And a team, I would also say, of just resources of even support groups, if you're interested in that, or resources in the sense of there's even adult day centers out there that you can go to. A Grace has one. I think they can go there for 8 hours a day. So if you're interested in that too, some caregivers still have to work, and they go, what can I do during the times I have to work? Where could they go? What should we be doing? So talking about that, of just what they want their life to look like.
Fair. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Hannah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We covered some ground here.
Okay.
Where can people find you?
Yeah. So I'm online, www.dementiadimensions.org. They can find me on Instagram, Dementia Dimensions, Facebook. I have an email, hannah@dementiadimensions.org.
That's all one word?
Yep.
Okay.
So on there you can reach out, and on my website you can reach right out to me on there. But yeah.
Awesome.
You can find me.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
I appreciate it.
This has been Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. We are locally underwritten by the Bank of Sun Prairie. If you're listening or watching this on the web, if you could do us a huge favor, give it the big old thumbs up, subscribe, and of course, share it with your entrepreneurial friends and those friends that may have someone that they have to take care of or know of someone that is running down the dementia road. Whether we like it or not, right?
Right.
We'd like to thank you, our wonderful listeners, as well as our guest, Hannah Klassy of Dementia Dimensions. Hannah, can you tell us that website one more time?
Yes, www.dementiadimensions.org.
.org. Gotta make sure we get that.
Yes.
Past episodes can be found morning, noon, and night at the podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next week. I want you to stay awesome. And if you do nothing else, enjoy your business.